Hi there. I'm just going to talk about language today. Language, speech, words, sentences, letters, which is what we consider the one tool to communicate. Everything is just words. It's nothing but words. But what's more important is the consciousness, is the awareness, is the knowledge behind those words, the thinking behind those words, the isness behind those words. And I'm going to just give out some words just as a start. And some of these words are yoga. Now yoga, even it's just a word, but what's more important is the actual practice of yoga. And yoga is not something that you just do as a form of an exercise. It's a way of being. So yoga is just another word, and it's the practicing of the yoga that is more important than the actual word itself. Another word is spirituality. Spirituality, again, it's if someone calls me a spiritual person, it is their own understanding of the word spiritual, and they have certain connotations with the word spiritual, and we label them as spiritual, not realizing that everyone is actually a spiritual being. And it just comes down to your own level of spirituality or your own level of consciousness that you are in this journey. What else is words? Names of countries: Australia, New Zealand, India, Holland, Portugal, the continent Africa, South America. They're just words. The moment we say, I am from Australia, I am from India, there is a certain identification. I mean, if you look at it from the cosmic or from the universal point of view, or the universe itself is another word. Earth is another word. The universe doesn't have a language as such. It's we that interpret the language of the universe and put them into words. So if you look at everything from the point of view of how the universe does things, it is something that cannot be verbalized or put into language. Yep. What else are words? Physical conditions, ailments, sickness, things like diabetes or a heart condition, AIDS, HIV, ulcer, asthma, eczema. All these are just words. And how do you get these words? The moment you go to a doctor, you become a patient. Even if you did not have any of these words that I just mentioned, we could all have those conditions. However, we haven't been to a doctor to have earned that name, earned that word. You're a diabetic. That's an expression that the doctor gives you, right? So if you didn't go to a doctor, you wouldn't know that you're a diabetic, or if you had a certain condition. What else are words? This is really interesting. Friday, Monday, Tuesday, the days of the week, they're just words. The calendar, months. The 1st of January could be anywhere. Few thousand years ago, whoever created the calendar just decided, okay, this will be the 1st of January, but that date could have been anywhere. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it takes roughly 365 days for the Earth to go around the sun, and there are several things that happen. We go through seasons. So basically, I mean, if you look at it from the universal point of view, or from the point of view of Earth, there's only days. There's only days. That's the only thing that we can actually see, which changes from night to day, day to night. And obviously the changing of the seasons. And we know that the seasons change from one to the other, and then you come back to the same season, and then it again goes into different seasons. I live in a country in Australia where we've got 4 seasons, sometimes in one day. 4 seasons. There's autumn, spring, winter, and summer. And this follows each other on a constant basis. Language and words, really, I mean, it's just for us to label and identify. What else are words? A plant, or animals, or insects. Whether you give a plant a certain name or not, it doesn't matter. A plant is how it is. The identification of a pet, whether you call a cat, or a rose by any other name, is still a rose. You know, we've heard this, but what I'm saying is that it's just words. What else? The concept of vegetarianism or vegan, they're just words, so that we can identify ourselves with that concept. I am vegan, I am vegetarian. Funny enough, people who eat everything and drink everything, you don't have a name for them. You don't have a label for them. The moment you start excluding things, and then you start to have a different label. I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian. Because the default is eating everything. That's what I think. What else? Numbers, they're also words. Age. Age is just a number. We've heard that. But if you really deeply think and ponder about it, it is just another word. How does it matter what the person's age is? But we need the person's age to be able to identify and label and judge them. Right, the other ones, the concept of I is another word, you is another word, he, she, they are all words. What I'm trying to say is, all these are just words. Everything is just words. And I'm just trying to understand everything from a point of view of not using words, looking at it from a point of view of let's say ignorance. I mean, on the one hand, it's the biggest problem with humanity is ignorance, but at the same time, it's the best thing that we could all be ignorant, because that way we can start afresh with a clean slate and start to create an awareness and start to understand everything from a languageless, wordless concept. I have been reading about and following a lot of people, maybe in the last 5 years or so. It started off with very much like a personal development field, and I was following people like Robin Sharma, Rhonda Byrne, and Jim Rohn, Sharon Pearson from the Coaching Institute. And as my level of consciousness was changing, I was moving on. We all go through different levels of consciousness. We are all on a certain level of consciousness. That is the only thing that is kind of differentiating one person from the other. That's the only thing. Everything else is exactly the same. The only difference between every individual on this planet is the level of consciousness. And how do we change our level of consciousness? It's just by reading and by having an open mind, being radically open-minded, not having any kind of biases, being just open, and to a certain extent being curious. Being curious. And being in a mode of, I've said this many times, inclusion and acceptance. Inclusion and acceptance. I've also been listening to people who are in the spiritual field. People like Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, Leo from Actualize.org, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Krishnamurti, Paulo Coelho, Sadhguru from recent times. And what I found among everything these people say, now also I would also like to include some of the organized religions, for the past maybe 2,500-3,000 years, like concepts like organized religions like Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, which is again all just concepts, just organized religions. And I've been trying to understand the scriptures and the texts of these religions, whether it's the Quran, the Bible, the Gita, or the Dhammapada. And what I found, the commonality between all this, between everything that I've just said, whether it's personal development, spiritual, religious, the commonality is all language. The only way all these people, all these texts were able to really express the real idea of life, the real idea of living, the real idea of this thing called self, is all in the ability to be able to use language. And even my ability to express all this, and I will be judged by everyone based on the language I use. No matter what I think, no matter how deep I think, no matter how conscious I am, how enlightened I am, we're all enlightened beings, that's another one. It's just the level of enlightenment. So my level of consciousness or enlightenment will be judged by not by the way I think, not by the way I function, but by the way I am able to express and articulate all my thoughts and my ideas. Regardless of how I truly function. Because the only way I can communicate all these thoughts is by this limited thing called language. Language has got only a certain number of words that you can use. We can think with words, but most times we do not think with words, we just think. And many times these thoughts are not our own thoughts, they are thoughts that come to us. They are thoughts that occur to us. And what we do is we try to interpret into words and put it down on paper, whether you're journaling or whether what I'm doing right now is speaking into it, is all these concepts that are occurring to me. And I can only use language. In this situation, I'm using English language again, something that was, something that has a language that has possibly 1,000,000 words. But that's it. So even if I mastered all the 1,000,000 words and used them perfectly in the best possible manner, my ability to express myself is still limited to those 1,000,000 words. But what about the mind? What about the thoughts that occur to us? Apparently 60,000 thoughts a day. How can you put all that into this limited concept like language?